she's going to do justice to the topic that she has been assigned to do. Dembo, I don't know if Dembo has a few comments to make about Emma, then we can formally get started. Emma, let me apologize ahead. I'm involved in quite a number of things, some of which you know. I came in from Abuja to Lagos last night, and I have to run from an activity to be able to open this webinar. So I will just exit in the next 5 minutes, but I try to be moving in and out. So Dembo, over to you.
Thank you, Prof. Dembo,
you should have done the introduction for. Hello?
Yes, I already said so much about ML Waji. If you want me to repeat it, yes, she is a passionate research management officer, the pioneer research management officer of the University of Ibadan. And she has done so much in the area of capacity building in research management and innovation. She's not tired yet, she's still doing it. So I'm sure she's going to share her lofty experiences with us at this webinar this morning. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Prof. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I think it would be useful to have an idea of who we have in the audience and the people that are research managers, and just a brief introduction, a quick word from you. And it's going to be an interactive session because I know that you're all involved with research in one way or the other. I can see my sister, Professor Kehinde Taiwo. First of all, I'd like to say thank you so much to Professor Popola for always putting me in the deep end and believing that I will not sink. And over the years, with his support, I have not sunk. I've been able to swim very well. So thank you for the challenges. It's always good to have someone in your life that challenges you to do more. And I thank Warima for inviting me to give this presentation, for believing in me, though I have left the desk of the Director of Research at the University of Ibadan, but it's something that they keep on calling me back, and it's something that I am passionate about, particularly capacity building. And I look forward to interacting with everybody during the course of this lecture. I can see Eukarya is here. I think so, no, maybe it's not her, there's somebody else, but Dembo also, great to see you on board. So for the other people that are here, could you quickly maybe quickly say a word so that I'll know who I'm talking to and I'll be able to tailor the various things I'll be saying to those people.
So can people raise their hands so that we are then able to call up on them one by one? Because normally everybody should be muted while the thing is on.
Okay, I understand that. And then can you make me co-host so I can share my slides, please? Thank you.
Yeah, you are already co-host.
Okay, thank you very much. While we're doing that, I will just share my slides.
So please, if anybody wants to introduce themselves, can you just raise a hand and then we'll unblock you and call on you. Modinat?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Modinat Bello, the Research Administrator from Kwara State University, Malete.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Julian? Ask on mute. Julian?
Good morning, everybody. Hello.
Yes.
Good morning.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Julian Gefak from the University of Yaoundé. I'm a lecturer, researcher, and associate professor, and dealing my research is mainly on crop protection using plants. I'm very happy to be with you today for how to network with other institutions.
All right, that's good. Lontong.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. You will pardon me, I'm on transit, but I had to link up. So eventually I will settle down so that I can listen to the presentation.
Beautiful.
I'm Longtong Turshak from the University of Jos, Nigeria, Plateau State. I am a lecturer in the university and also a researcher, as well as an adjunct lecturer to the AP Leventis Ornithological Research Institute. Basically, my field of specialization is ecology and conservation biology. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, beautiful. Kumba from the Gambia. Hello, Kumba.
Hello. Yes. Hello.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kumba Jame. I work at the Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Science, and Technology. I'm at the Directorate of Research, and what we do here basically is to promote research, administrate it, and also to coordinate activities in the country. Thank you.
Excellent, Kumba, and thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Eme Lonto Olubunmi.
Good morning. My name is Oshuson Olubunmi. I am the Research Administrator, Governance for the College of Medicine, University of Ibadan.
Oh, okay, that's beautiful. All right, I think I've seen a number of people also do written introductions on the chat box.
Okay.
Russell Binks from MRC in the Gambia, Osasun Olubunmi, Research Administrator of Governance for the College of Medicine, Ibadan. Friends, nice to have you all in the room. I trust you will have a good time with Emma. All right, so that's Professor.
All right, then.
And then we have Jean-Pierre Ngessan with me here from IRSF in Senegal. So quite a good spread. Senegal, Gambia, Nigeria. Yes, I think I've seen somebody here who is in France at the moment.
Wow, that's nice. Okay. Oh, I think I've gotten an idea of the people that are here, and I think I can start. Dimbo.
Yes, you can start. I've got somebody from Uganda now joining.
Wow, that's nice. Okay, so I'll be starting now, and this is the title that I was given to present: networking and collaborating with other institutions. And this is my presentation for today. As I've said, and from the introductions, lots of people are already engaged in this work. So this is a bit of this might not be new to all of you, but therefore it's not something that I'm just coming to give a lecture. From time to time, I will pause and then we would have an interaction, because that's the way that we all get to learn more. I look forward to the interaction, and it's not going to be one long didactic lecture. So this is the outline for today. And then, as Prof. Popola said, research has become increasingly more collaborative. We are all aware of that. Those of us that are researchers, those of us that are research administrators, we realize that the days of one-man research are over, particularly in STEM, the science, technology, and engineering and medicine. It's gone. And anybody that brings out the paper, even in the social sciences, it as a single author is looked at with a sense of people not being sure that this work is really what it's supposed to be. So this research really occurs as research collaborative groups and as a network. So the rationale for this is that two or more people together can produce better results than one person working independently. So it's extremely important that we collaborate. And collaboration in academic research is often equated to equal partnership between researchers who are pursuing a mutually interesting and beneficial goal. But I'm sure that we're all aware that it's not always an equal partnership, particularly when in our own low and middle income countries, our governments are not providing funding, and we have to source, we normally collaborate with people from outside whose governments are providing the funding. And to have a limited say in terms of what can be done. In terms of, because sometimes, you know, we have that colloquial thing is that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. So sometimes we might be restricted in terms of what we can say in terms of the research, but that doesn't mean we don't have an input at all. And I would encourage the researchers to ensure that they are, you know, that they're very open in terms of the agreements, in terms of the collaboration. We shouldn't, in Africa or in sub-Saharan Africa, just be people that collect samples and send them. We're not data collectors, and our researchers are not data collectors. We bring on board our intellectual capacity. We bring on board our knowledge of the environment. So we shouldn't just sign off on agreements because the agreements are bringing money. We should sign off on the agreements because we know that they have scientific integrity, and those agreements also will bring knowledge and, you know, input to our own society. So we shouldn't sell off ourselves and our own the participants based on the money that the research is bringing in. So collaborations and networks. Basically, research collaboration occurs between two or more people working together on an intellectual endeavor. Collaborative efforts occur in groups and networks of scientists. So you have a collaboration, it might be one person, it might be two people. It might also be involve the groups that you have, you know, even as a researcher. Then research networks involve multiple research groups which are physically separated, but share expertise and resources and exchange valuable skills. And this is extremely important. And even as a senior researcher might have their own therefore, please, can you mute everybody else? Sorry. You kindly
if that is what bring it into the field, because even the first game.
Let me see who is not muted.
The game that is defeated when you didn't play. Yeah. Oh, but then that's defeated.
Sorry, all right, thank you very much, Dembo. So research networks involve multiple research groups which are physically separated but share expertise and resources and exchange valuable skills. This is very important in the world that we live in today. Knowledge, even in our various specialties, involves various aspects. For instance, I'm in public health, or let's take somebody in medicine, and somebody comes in with diabetes. Apart from the treatment of the diabetes, and we're looking at the research for diabetes management, there are also social issues. So we require the people in the social sciences, in psychology or behavioral sciences. They're important as well in terms of the management of the patient. So gone are the days that we think, okay, I'm in medicine or I'm in surgery, and the research that I'm involved in will only involve what my own specialty. So we need resources in our collaborative ventures, and also we need networks in different countries, and these will bring the resources that require and then exchange of valuable skills. Then most scientific research is undertaken in collaborative groups or networks of researchers. And as we go on, we'll see the value of this, and it's extremely important. So what are the types of collaboration that exists? You have the classic partnership between researchers in the same department or institution. And even in this type of partnership, you know, one thing we have to realize, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, we need to bring our master students along. We need to bring our doctoral students along. That is a collaboration by itself, and that's a collaboration that enables the development of early career researchers. And in some of the research networks have been involved in. I've seen the value of this. I mean, there's a particular research network I'm involved in with a partner collaborator in Johns Hopkins University. And the core PI is actually a doctoral student. And she's the one that does the day-to-day running for the particular project. And then they're master students on that project, or master's graduates. So that helps to develop their capacity, because I'm sure for most of us that are researchers, we find that it's when we become academic staff or so that we seem to cut our teeth on the nitty-gritty of research. And that shouldn't be so. We should have a situation where we are actually developing capacity. You know, that capacity is being transferred to the next generation of researchers. And it can only be done if they're involved in the projects that we are involved in. So that's very important. So you have that partnership within our departments and then, or our institution. That's extremely important. We can conduct research in food technology, for instance, and partner with people in nutrition, or partner with people to develop a particular machine or technology that would aid the development of some food types. And or partner with people in engineering or in agronomy to develop food types. So it's important that we partner. And I think sometimes we're very territorial. We think as researchers, we don't cross the lines to meet other people to discuss our research ideas. So it's important, even as research administrators and research managers, that we engage people, we encourage them to collaborate with other people. Then there's partnership with industries and private companies and NGOs. This is also very important. The industries require our expertise as researchers, and even the expertise from our universities. I know that this is quite difficult in the African environment. And you know, sometimes we actually do not cross over to be engaged, and then the industries don't include us as well, apart from maybe something like in pharmacy, and pharmacy is involved with a number of the pharmaceutical industries. Abroad, the tech industries are very involved in, they work with the universities to develop different patents. A lot of the things that we are using now, like the telephones, like the different technologies that we use now, emails, etc., have been developed with the industry, or have been developed with major funding organizations. So as we evolve in Africa, we really need to look at how we can engage with the industry. And then private companies or NGOs. The NGOs do a lot of work in the communities, but sometimes they're not able to evaluate. So there are ways we should encourage our researchers, and we as researchers should engage with them to be able to provide the expertise in terms of the methodology of conducting research and how to report, etc. Then collaboration involving a senior researcher who receives funding for conducting extensive research with junior researchers or faculty members in other institutions. Senior researchers should involve junior faculty. That's very important. That's the way that the junior faculty themselves can develop, and they can understand the dynamics of collaborative research. And in our own countries, I'm sure we have funding, like we have the TED Fund, the Tertiary Higher Education Research Fund, that provides funding to be able to collaborate with other institutions, or to develop research teams. That's important. And then research fellowships in other institutions are as part of a capacity building grants. Sometimes you might, there's like in Northwestern, there's a partnership we have with an NIH grant, and then there are research fellowships that people can go for master's programs, etc. So that's very important as well. So in writing research, we should think beyond, we should encourage researchers to think beyond themselves, but think about capacity building as well. Then other types of research collaboration, include multiple research groups located in several countries working together to gain a global perspective on a public health problem. And it's important because the perspectives change with different environments, and in terms of the issues of sustainable development, in terms of global health. We could even see with COVID-19, we can see the variations in terms of infection and its severity of infection globally. Like in sub-Saharan Africa, the figures are not as high as what they are in the high income countries. And there are questions that are being asked. Why is that? What would be responsible for that? And there's research that's started looking into it. There's some results that have come out and they're saying, oh, maybe it's because of exposure to vitamin D, maybe the type of COVID infection that we have in sub-Saharan Africa is less virulent than what they have in the high-income countries. Maybe it's because the high-income countries have higher proportions of older persons and they have multiple morbidity. And as a result of that, they are not, that's what is responsible for the higher severity and high levels of mortality. So there's so many questions in various areas that can be answered through our research. And it's important that we have collaborative research to answer these questions because populations are different. So in this type of research, the research groups apply for and receive independent funding, usually from the same funder. I think in terms of maybe the EU funding Horizon 2020, or there are different types of funders that might say, okay, the research institute might say, we want you to apply for different aspects of this funding. And then you do the work. So all the data is collected pertaining to the research question is collected, and then will be available to the whole research group. Then another type of research is two or more researchers at different institutions working on different aspects of the same project, and then doing joint data analysis and reporting and publication. So in terms of looking at the efficacy of maybe a particular drug, or looking at the development of a technology for food production or whatever, one person might be looking at, okay, when we produce this aspect of this food, this particular crop, how can we package it in a way that will be acceptable to the community? Another person might be looking at the nutritional benefit. Another person might be looking at how do we develop an instrument or an equipment that can help the production of this particular this food item, and then also improve the value chain and reduce the loss, the wastage from that. So there are different aspects, that can be investigated. Then you have multi-center clinical trials. These are major trials that are frequently conducted in the biomedical sciences. They involve testing of experimental drugs or treatments or devices on human subjects. And they're usually conducted in multiple sites. For instance, like the COVID vaccine now, they might be rolling them out, and even now that they've already said, oh, there's 95% efficacy. They would have done that in multiple sites. They probably want to try them out in cycles. So it's important that, it has to be, those vaccines have to be tried out in different populations to see how effective they are, because human beings are different, our genotypes are different, our genomics is different. So it requires testing in multiple sites. So we have several researchers involved, sometimes even hundreds of researchers involved. And then it requires the establishment of a board or a committee to develop criteria and procedures for submission, for publication, and then other aspects. We'll be talking about those things later. So I have here some examples of collaborations. I'll be asking later for some of the ones that some participants are aware of. So you have the Medical Partnership Initiative, which was conducted, which was funded by the National Institutes of Health, the Fogarty International Center, for developing capacity for sub-Saharan Africa. That was a major grant. And then the other grants that have come out as a result of that, you have the H3 Africa grant, which are really genomics related to genetic descriptions, the genetic patterns in the African population and how they affect the medical outcomes of diseases in the African populations. Then you have synthesis and translation of research and innovation for polio eradication, STRIPE, which is a study that I'm involved in. And then the NIHR Global Research Unit on Improving Health in Slums. And the WHO study on global aging, excuse me, what did I do? WHO study on global aging and adult health. That's the stage study. So I'll show you, the next few slides will look at that. So this is the a slide from the H3 Africa site, which shows, you can see here, you have multiple funders, Wellcome Trust, you have NIH as well. And then these studies are being conducted in North Africa, West Africa. You can see the countries in West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Burkina Faso, Mali, Senegal, the Gambia, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, and then Central Africa, and then Eastern Africa, and then Southern Africa. And H3 Africa data brings out hundreds of thousands of, participants, and the funding for H3 Africa is major. I'm sure that in some of our research institutions, we have people that are involved with the H3 Africa, different H3 Africa grants, because over the years, it has evolved to various aspects. So we'll still talk about that. Then STRIPE, this is a study that I'm involved in that involves 7 partners. The lead collaborative organization is at Johns Hopkins University. And then you have, our partners are in Nigeria, we have Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. We have partners in Ethiopia, Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh as well. So then for the SAGE, WHO study on global aging and adult health, you can see here, there are multiple countries that are involved in the SAGE study. Ghana, you have South Africa, and then you have India as well. And so many other countries that are involved in this particular study. So I think before I go to the benefits of collaboration, can you give me, just type in the box, or if you have any, what are the international collaborative studies that your institution is involved in? Maybe just two people can just say something. I just want to make sure you're with me. Could you raise your hand? Dembo.
Yes, I know I'm there. Olubunmi. See there.
See, that's the thing with Zoom. Sometimes the participants might go.
Okay, I'm on.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you, Emma. You're doing a good job. We've had a collaboration with IDRC, a 5-institution project. It's on production of vegetables, underutilized African vegetables. And it involved 3 countries, if I'm correct: Nigeria, Benin Republic, and Canada. Mm-hmm. Yes, 3 countries, but 5 institutions, sponsored by IDRC. Mm-hmm. That's one. We've also had EU grants on mobility for teaching of postgraduate students. That also cuts across the African region, not just countries now. It must involve at least 5 regions. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We had a participant from Cameroon, University of Yaoundé 1. Could she share her experience with us? Is she still with us?
Olubumi is saying that he can't get unmuted. You know us in Gambia, we are a research site.
Yes.
I think one of the projects that we are involved with is called One West African Network for TB, HIV, and Malaria Research. And that involves 16 institutions across West Africa, 4 northern partners. It is funded by the EDCTP. We try to build collaborations with pharma so that they could bring their clinical trials to the sub-region. So it's really a big project involving. Now, I mean, we've applied for a 3rd level of funding, which hopefully will start in October of next year, involving 25 institutions in West Africa.
Okay. So, but how many people do you have enrolled on the study?
Wow, that's a big question because it's different components. So you have a study here in malaria, one in HIV, one in neglected tropical disease. So I can't give it up on top of my head, but it's several people involved in those studies.
Okay, so I mean, thank you, Dembo, for that. So from Dembo, what he has described, you've seen that there are different aspects that are being taken care of in this particular study that's being funded. It's like you have malaria, you have other neglected tropical diseases, and you have HIV. So the way it is, research has become very, very complex now. Gone are the days that researchers would just do a small study. And yes, you can still do that, but if our institutions want to be relevant in the global research think tank and research activities, if we want to be recognized, if we want to improve our ratings, our rankings, for those of us that are involved in research in the universities, we need to be visible. You know, you go now, you look at publications, they're talking about thousands of participants. One person cannot do research to cover thousands of participants. So it's important that we encourage our researchers in our institutions to be involved in collaborative research. Okay, so I'll be going on to the benefits of collaboration. Thank you so much for your contributions. I'll still be coming back to you. So collaboration facilitates the sharing of resources such as laboratories and expertise. Sometimes we don't have the resources, and that is very, very common in sub-Saharan African universities. We don't have the resources. I mean, even in Greek, I'm aware of people that have had to go to IITA from the University of Ibadan to go and use their resources there. So collaboration ensures the sharing of resources. Like if a senior researcher has established a relationship or has been doing consultancies in a particular institution, that person has access to can say, oh, I have students, can my students come here? But also that can be established through a formal relationship, which we'll be talking about later. And then collaborations foster the development of international research standards. I'm sure most of us in our organizations have had to overhaul the way that we do things. I remember as far back as 2000, the early 2000s, when the issues of ethics in research were coming on board. And we had to establish an ethics committee. People had to be trained. People had to get engaged, had to receive formal training, masters, etc. in research ethics, and which was funded by the National Institutes of Health. So, you know, when you want to be involved in this large center, multi-center research with international partners, the level of research, the standards of research have to come up. We can't be playing at the local level that we're used to playing at. We have to overhaul, you know. I know we've had these discussions in some of our Guarima meetings whereby people will say, oh, well, we conducted the research and then afterwards we went to get the ethical approval. We all know that that's not acceptable. So there are standards that we have to adhere to now, and it's increasingly becoming very, very critical that we move up to those standards. Then it increases research involvement in some institutions. Because when there's international research like that, you might have to get collaborators from other institutions. You might have to get other people, other researchers from your institution to get involved, because you realize, oh, I can't do this by myself. I remember when we started off with the Johns Hopkins collaboration, they said, oh, they need somebody else. So I had to get one of my colleagues, my younger colleagues, involved. And we've been working together for about 4 years now. So it also develops research capacity. I have a team of younger people that we're working with. So that there's that research capacity development. We learn things. Even when we have meetings, there's interaction. There are different, we learn, oh, this is what is happening on the international scene. Even though sometimes our governments might not be funding our research, we are able to partner with other people to update our research skills and to develop research capacity. Then we have access to large numbers of diverse populations for research, which is like what Dembo had discussed when he was giving his example. Then they are more likely to attract larger amounts of funding. Like if you talk about Horizon 2020, EU, IDRC, when you have a larger group of researchers, you can apply for these large pots of money. And then also you would have developed the relationship, maybe through smaller research grants, and then you'll be able to have right in there in your proposal and say, we have developed a track history with each other. We've done research together. We've done this smaller research for 100 and something thousand pounds, and these are the results that we got. Then you can go on and apply for, you know, £1 million or 3 million pounds, or even larger than that. So you look at some of these major grants, and they run in millions, tens of millions of dollars and pounds. But it's a large group that can do that. Then it encourages higher levels of innovation and creativity, because you have more people thinking together, more researchers thinking together, young people on board as well that have creative ways of doing things. And you know, with one of the groups that we work with in the UK, when we go for some of our research meetings, after talking about, oh, maybe the publications or, you know, the progress with the research that we are on, we spend so much time just brainstorming about new ideas. If we are in a meeting for 3 or 4 days, 1.5 days to 2 days will be spent on brainstorming. So what do you think about this? Excuse me. What do you think about this? What are the next stages of things that we need to do? You know, there's so much brainstorming, and it has really helped even for my personal development and the development of the other members of our team, because you don't just sit down there and absorb, you know, or zone out. You must think. You really must think. You must contribute your own quota. And from our end, because we understand our environment, we understand the people that we serve, we can actually bring out really good ideas. So collaboration is really important for helping us to expand our minds beyond our local endeavors, beyond what we think, oh, just for promotion. Okay, I just need this research to write publications. It helps creativity. And then sometimes what some research officers do abroad is that when there's a research grant that is out, they actually call people together. And I did that as well when I was director of research at the University of Ibadan. You actually, okay, this call, it looks as if, oh, it's for agri or it's related to nutrition. Okay, who are the groups of people we can get together? Come, let's discuss this. Or if it is related to water and sanitation, we can get people together and say, okay, in environmental health, in environmental engineering, get people together, behavioral sciences. What can we do with this study, this call? How can we put it together? And the excellent thing about it is that these calls come out and you normally have about 3 or 6 months. Or sometimes you have 1 year's notice, because they'll tell you that it runs in cycles. And so we can sit down and brainstorm. And if you have, once you have partners, Professor Taiwo mentioned about the mobility EU mobility research grants that have been given. So that you have to have partners. You have to develop partnerships ahead of these announcements. So more complex research questions can be tackled with this research collaborations, because you have multiple people, multiple researchers working on different aspects, and they are looking at the complex aspects of a particular problem. For instance, disease. Diseases are also related to behavior. So if somebody in medicine is looking at treatments, or somebody in pharmacology or clinical pharmacology is looking at that, the behavioral aspects, like there's a particular study that one of our researchers is involved in, arises, and it's related to stroke. So they have a behavioral scientist there. They have the person in medicine, neurologist there. You have some other groups of people, community physician as well. So there are different questions that are being asked and being tackled by the members of these different groups. And this particular study is being conducted in multiple African countries. Then there's a higher likelihood of producing patents and going commercial, for groups maybe in engineering, in other, maybe food production. There are ways that, because there are different people that are thinking, the engineers are there, the nutritionists are there, so they can begin to think of what patents can be developed and how can this go commercial. And it's important. And then when you have large funding, you can look at going commercial. An individual or 2 or 3 people, it's difficult for you to go commercial. Even if you file your patents in wherever your office for filing patents is, in your own country. So what, after that, what happens? But because you have large funding, there's a higher likelihood of developing patents. So, okay. So what are some of the collaborators' expectations, and how do you handle them? It's essential to communicate expectations from the beginning. It's essential to know also what exactly the research grant is about. I think sometimes in sub-Saharan Africa, we're just happy. It's like, okay, there's this grant, I'm going to be able to do my work, I'll get some money. We don't read the documentation. We might not spend enough time reading the documentation. We might not spend ensure that we put in our intellectual property. I remember there was a meeting I was on recently, and we were talking about having a steering committee. And the leader of the team was saying, oh, maybe she might be in the steering committee. I said, no, you can't be on the steering committee, because that's a conflict of interest. You can't function there as an independent by an independent assessor. So that's important as well. Then we must have roles for the investigators, and then roles of what is the role of the members of the team. Each person has to be there, not just because that person was your supervisor or is your student. What is the role of that person? You're not just putting the person there to put in time and effort. There's even no time and effort if the person is not doing anything. Everybody must pull their weight on a collaborative research activity. Then research administrative staff could have a role in encouraging researchers to reassess some of their interactions with other researchers. So it's very important that the research administrators are involved in this agreement. So what are the type of collaborative agreements that we have? We have agreements, basically, the agreements are instruments used for formalizing collaborations. There are various types of agreements which are used for various aspects of research collaborations. We've talked about how large some of these research collaborations might be. So if they're so large, the relationships must be formalized. Because if we don't have any formal relationship or guidance or documentation, everybody will just do what they feel like doing, and at the end of the day, it's chaotic. Meanwhile, the funding organization has released millions of dollars or pounds or euros for this work to be done. So we must have collaborative agreements. So one of such agreements is a sub-award. So sub-awards are agreements between an institution that has a grant. So the institution that has the grant, there is a prime awardee, and another institution is a sub-recipient, which is responsible for a portion of work. So the sub-agreement includes portions of agreement between the sponsor and the awardee. So with the sub-agreement, a portion of the parent's award is put in there. This is the objective of the grant. This is what you expect. And then now the prime awardee will say, in your site in Nigeria, we expect that you'll collect data or you'll do this within this particular time frame. It incorporates the many of the terms and conditions agreed upon by the funder and the prime awardee. So for instance, the Stripe study that I talked about that we have been involved in, that it was awarded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we have our lead PI at Johns Hopkins, and then Nigeria is one of the sites. So we have a sub-agreement with them that's usually signed off by their research office, the person that's in charge of their research office and the person that's in charge of our research office. So it is a legal document. It's normally legally binding, and we have to review the terms. So the agreement covers all the aspects of the relationship between the prime awardee and the sub-recipients. It's very specific, it's very detailed. So what are the contents of the sub-award? There's provisions covering payments, financial reporting, intellectual property, publication rights, data retention, material transfer agreements. So it's very, very important that we look at this agreement. You have to look at the provisions. It will tell you, okay, that you will not get your money at once, because even from the parent funding organization, the prime awardee will receive their funds annually. And then provisions covering payments. For instance, some people are in some institutions, like the British institutions, they'll tell you that you invoice for the work that has been done. And it's very important, particularly for us in sub-Saharan Africa and maybe those outside South Africa, because our institutions will not give us funds for research compared to the institutions in the high-income countries that have something for their researchers for research. And then they're able to, for instance, kind of like loan or given an advance for research, and then they make an invoice of payment and the money is paid later. So a couple of years, we ran into a bit of an issue with one of the organizations, because once aware actually we were aware, but it wasn't a very comfortable situation whereby we had to wait until we had done the work for the first 3 months and then pay. The invoice was sent. So even the lead researcher on that study had to buy a lot of things from his funds, spent millions of naira to be able to commence the work on that project. So we have to be very careful in the things that we are signing. And you might not be able to change like that invoice process, because like some people, like with that particular organization or university, they said that that's their standard principle. We run in the invoice process. So with that invoice process, maybe what can be looked at is like, okay, rather than the investigators, the lead investigators receiving their honorarium or their payments on a quarterly basis, they might have to wait till the end of the year so that the funds are used for other things. The honorarium might be invoiced, but the funds will be used for other things, for the research activities, so that there'll be a rolling over of the funds. Then there'll be aspects of financial reporting. When should the reporting be done? And then intellectual property, who owns the intellectual property? We will talk a bit about that. And then publication rights, data retention, and material transfer agreements. Those are some of the things that are covered in the award. And then the period there's normally a statement of what is the duration of the sub-award, when will it be renewed, what has to be done within that particular period of time. So the schedule of activities. Then there's also something called the teaming agreement. So collaborating institutions may execute a team agreement when a funding proposal is being funded to the funding organization. So there's a preliminary agreement that says, oh, these are some of the things that we're going to do, these institutions are supposed to do. It specifies the nature of the working relationship of the teams, may include an agreement to establish a scientific advisory board and specifications regarding the composition of the board. So it's important for us to have these things in view, that, and particularly with these large studies, we must have a steering committee, we must have a scientific advisory board that oversees the activities of the particular grant. And then if it's a clinical research study or a human subject study, there might be a data management and data monitoring and safety board that will ensure that what is being done is within the parameters of the proposed research. It can also indicate the basic terms related to ownership of intellectual properties and issues of data sharing. That's important. And then sometimes when the funding is awarded, the prime award may contain provisions that are not consistent with the agreement. So in such cases, the sub-award agreement will supersede the teaming agreement that was agreed upon initially. So, but that will involve discussions, it will involve engagement with the parties. So it's not just done unilaterally, it must be communicated to the other parties involved. Then you have collaboration agreements. This could also be referred to as memorandum of understanding. I'm sure most of us are aware of this. And it's very important. We don't go into research without having that understanding. Then, like the teaming agreements, they're similar. And then it's executed between institutions, irrespective of whether sponsored funding is expected or not. Sometimes you might meet somebody in a conference, the researcher might meet somebody in a conference, and then we decide that, oh, we want to work with your institution. And I think that's something that our research offices should encourage our researchers, get collaborators, and also don't get your personal collaborators. There's a tendency for our researchers, particularly in the universities, to think these collaborators are mine, and they will not share. Rather than having an institutional collaboration, there's a tendency to have an individual collaboration, which doesn't benefit the larger institution. So it's important. This memorandum of understanding is usually between institutions and says, oh, we are ready to collaborate with you on research ideas in various aspects, whether it is in agriculture, it's in economics or social sciences, the humanities, or it's in medicine. So, so there's an overarching memorandum of understanding between the two institutions and any other institutions that might be involved in the research. And it's normally signed by the head of the institution or the head of the research office. So it covers the same programmatic issues as the teaming agreements, and then provisions there's also provision for facility use agreements that can be made if the collaborators for one institution will be using the facilities of another institution. Like what I mentioned, UI students and researchers use IITA facilities. So I can't say categorically that there's a memorandum of understanding, but if such a thing exists, it makes it more fluid, because whenever people are requesting to go to IITA or going to a particular lab, maybe OAU or so, they can say, oh, we have this existing agreement, and based on this agreement, we are asking that we want to utilize your resources, like your central lab or whatever. So these agreements can be quite detailed and should be reviewed by research administrators and the legal units. It's important that the MOUs should be reviewed by the legal units, because there are a lot of terms. Before you commit an institution, the institution's legal unit should go through and say, and it also normally goes through the registrar, who will pass it on to the legal units, and then they will look at the fine print and say, can we commit? Because if you go there and say, oh, any sample that is collected will be shipped to the institution in the United States, we're selling ourselves short. So there are things like that, or the material transfer agreement, where the rights for whatever patents are developed from this study go to the collaborating institution. We've sold ourselves short again. So it's important that these agreements are reviewed by those that have the legal mind as well. So intellectual property agreements, another form of agreement that are normally used. They cover inventions and other discoveries that might arise from a collaboration. They may also cover copyrights, which is a form of intellectual property, usually related to written documentations. So the basic issues covered is the ownership of intellectual property. Who owns it? If we develop a particular thing, who owns it? And then the other terms address are license rights between parties, provisions for sharing the costs and the income related to the protection and licensing of the intellectual property. Now, I think Professor Taiwo has been involved in intellectual property. She's in technology. Maybe I'll ask her opinion regarding some of these things. But if something is developed, or maybe an instrument, like we have some research that we're doing with partners in biomedical research, and there some equipment that they've been looking at developing. There was an initial baseline to see what are the needs, what needs to be done. And one of the things they came up with was a locally developed incubator. So if that incubator was developed, and there was an initial framework that was developed for it. Now, to patent it, it has to be licensed, and then looking at, okay, if it goes, if it's taken to the industry, to be able to produce to produce it on a mass level. So when that item is sold, what are the costs? How is the cost going to be shared? So that's important as well. We have to look at those areas. Those are some of the business aspects of patenting. So business and financial issues that are covered in agreements. Collaborations have business and financial issues associated with them. Knowledge generation brings out knowledge products. We've mentioned patents. Some of them are drugs. Professor Taiwo mentioned about some local vegetables. So if we bring out something that, or even in terms of in agric, developing the value chain and developing some machinery that will improve the value chain. So how are these business issues covered? And even the day-to-day running of the research, and some other aspects that will be covered. So these business and financial agreements, they are written agreements, they address these issues which have been discussed and agreed upon at the beginning of the formal collaboration. Our researchers should be active listeners in all the conversations and active contributors. I've already mentioned that. Then there's usually a point of reference, particularly these documents are points of reference, particularly when disputes arise. These agreements provide objective basis for resolving disputes. So disputes will arise because it's like, okay, maybe a patent comes up and it's like, oh, and we want to take it to the market and this patent is yielding a lot of things. What do we do? Or in terms of budgeting as well, we'll be talking about that. So disputes will arise. But once we have documentation, it helps the situation to ensure that, oh, we already had agreed on this and we can't, these are the parameters that we'll be operating in. Oh. So sub-award, back to sub-award, this is a very important document. It provides information on work to be done. Budget for the work. Budgets are financial documentations that indicate how the monies will be spent. And different organizations have different regulations regarding budget line items or the groups that they belong to. Like NIH will say that you cannot move more than 25% of a budget item to another budget item without informing them. But if it's below 25%, it is okay, but you must report why the movement was made. An explanation must be made. Then allowable, sorry, that was a mistake. Allowable and unallowable costs. And then schedules of payment. When will the payments be made? How will the payments be made? How and when? And financial and research related reports will be submitted. That's very, very important. Is it going to be quarterly? Is it going to be annually? And then how does this relate to the release of payments? Then consulting agreements. Collaboration may be formalized through a consulting agreement. Usually the individual is being hired. The consultant is hired to work with one or more of the collaborators. There are different aspects of work. For instance, I'm working on the Lancet Commission document, and we needed a consultant. So that consultant, I'm working on one aspect of the Lancet Commission document, and we had to get a couple of consultants that worked with me. But there's a larger group of about maybe 20-something people. So for that work, and generally with consulting agreements, payments are usually made upon satisfactory completion of a well-defined scope of work. So that person was supposed to, or those people were supposed to provide documentation about 30 pages on the historical aspects of how the health sector was developed over time in Nigeria. So once that work is complete, there's a payment that will be made. So a consultant who agrees to be engaged in a work for hire basis has no rights at all over the work once they have performed it, whether it's the data or it's the information collected or developed. Their names would not appear on the publication because it's a work for hire. They're going to be paid for that particular job. So that's an important thing to note when people are hiring consultants. So the facility use agreement, it contains charges associated with one of the collaborators using the facilities and equipment at another collaborator's institution. Remember we mentioned like IITA, people going to use facilities at IITA. It's not free. And sometimes people will come and use the central lab. I'm sure that definitely, the central labs of institutions, there are fees to be paid to run some of the tests because these facilities have to be maintained. For instance, we are having like a biorepository at the University of Ibadan. We're looking at the cost of maintaining the freezers so that researchers can come and actually store their samples there. But the freezers cost money. There's electricity. All of us know that electricity costs have gone up. So there's a cost of running the electricity. There's a cost of maintaining the facility. And we have to become more and more aware in our African institutions that there are no longer any free lunches. There's no free education, though our governments may say, oh, education is free. But we know that our governments are not funding education the way that they used to fund before. So we must be willing, we must be business-minded about the way we manage our facilities. Otherwise, we will not have money to maintain our facilities. So charges are developed based on cost studies, and the same rate should be charged to all users. Facility use charges should be developed based on the actual cost of running the facility. So that means we have to do a market survey. We have to look, okay, how much is the electricity? How much are the freezers? How long will these freezers last? So what is the lifespan of these freezers? When we need to buy new ones, how are we planning to do that? And how does the rental of these facilities add up to provide for the funding for this? Then discounted rates should be discouraged unless it's already in the agreement. Maybe the person is using a large portion of the facility, and based on that, there's a discount. But we shouldn't be partial in providing discounts and sentimental. Oh, this person is from my department. Oh, this person. No. When we have those charges, we should ensure that that is what is given. And even for our collaborators, we should say these are the costs. And we shouldn't shift and change, because sometimes we'll say, oh, because this is an international grant and it's coming from Harvard, we will charge more than what we would have charged if it is coming from Reading, University of Reading. No, because these funders have a way, or these collaborators have a way of discussing. And if we have price disparities, it makes it difficult for us to explain. Definitely, maybe if your collaborator is from a sub-Saharan African country, you might not charge as much. But whatever rate you're charging for an African country, let it be the same for the African institutions. If you're charging a higher rate for some other institutions outside Africa, let it be the same. So, and then we should also ensure that use of facilities at low cost should be discouraged when others are paying standard rates for the use of those facilities. It's not fair. It's not acceptable. And if people know that there's partiality, they will not be happy to use those facilities, and it will not put your institution in a good light. Cost share arrangements can be considered. For instance, if in a particular grant, this is your contribution, or this is part of your contribution to this particular grant, that the facilities will be used, that can be considered. That is okay. So you also have material transfer agreements. This is very important, because this says, okay, when we have these materials, how are we going to transfer them? If we have to transfer them to a particular site for their analysis, so we have to have an agreement. So you have these material transfer agreements. They contain the provisions for liability resulting from the use of materials that are being transferred. If anything happens to them, that liability has to be there. Then they may also include the cost issues, such as payment for shipping and handling costs involved in providing the material as a requirement for return. And then there's also a requirement for returning leftover materials that might exist when the material transfer agreement expires. That's important. Then occasionally the collaborator providing the material may also charge a fee for access to the material. Some other people might want to use the material, so they can request a fee. Some people outside the collaboration. But we have to be cautious.
Hello?
Hello, good.
It looks like she dropped out.
Yes, sir. Maybe she has some network problems. Hopefully she'll be on back again soon.
Okay. All right. So just before she comes in, I just wanted to make a few announcements. I think you shared the GFGP email on the Warima networks. GFGP is a self-assessment financial tool that has been developed by the African Academy of Sciences. And then the assessment comes at different levels, from bronze to platinum. I think it's 4 levels. I think they've been in operation for about 2-3 years now. And the Wellcome Trust, that is the main funding body, is doing an assessment of how it is being seen by partners, what innovations that needs to be done to improve it in one way or the other. So the consultants that have been taken for that assessment is called Muya Research Consulting. They've sent out first a survey So if you could, if your institution either is registered on the GFGP or is not registered, you could still complete the survey. And then we want to set up discussion sessions with WARIMA membership on how they think the general area of due diligence and financial oversight is being handled from the donor community, and how the GFGP as a tool can be used to help, not help, or whatever the situation may be. So that's that sent out. If you don't have the email and you want to have information, please check up with the secretariat, or you could as well contact me directly, Dembo can. Then I think early next week, WHO is having a session on the approaches to managing indirect costs in low and middle income countries. I think that will be a very useful session for everybody. I think they looked at experiences across the board and broadening it up with wider knowledge as to what sort of advice they will give to institutions in terms of systems, procedures, and the approaches to dealing with indirect costs. Then the SARIMA has introduced this professional research recognition program. There is a call that is out at the moment for people who are highly experienced in research management to apply. If you need guidance on that, both myself and Professor Labode are members of the board. Certainly, we may not be able to be the people to assess your application, but we could help you, guiding you in terms of completion of the application form. Looks like, hello?
Hi, Dembo. Is it possible for you to send all of this information to Chibuza so she can put it on our website or somewhere where people can access this information?
Yeah, she has them. We've already done that. I'm just sort of just talking about them to re-emphasize the point, but all of that is done for all three of them.
Okay.
Yeah, Patricia.
And so our non-members are, okay.
Go ahead. Hi,
Hello,
Prof. How
everyone.
are you?
I'm fine, and everyone, I've been part of the training, and I want to just welcome everyone and greet Professor Eme for a good delivery. I'm excited about what's going on, and hope we will expand and strengthen our participation in WARIMA, particularly our registration, and a lot of activities ahead of us, and we have to work ahead. All of us and all are going to be part of this. We'll receive the slides for the training so that we strengthen our network.
And talking about the logic of our membership and participation, so it is our objective that we will expand on this training program. So I think if you look at the first two sessions, what we did was people practically talking about the things that they've done in their institutions in relation to a particular topic, i.e. the establishment or the actual running of a research management office. We need to move on this. I think the wider membership that's connected now, if there are any specific research management topics in your institutions that you think are good points for discussion, again, contact us and we will have a conversation with you to try to fine tune it for another session of some kind. Can we put on your contact here if possible? Yeah, I can.
I think Chibuzo has been connecting with our members on Telegram, and we have a database of contacts, an extensive one. So people will be connected through email But we need to engage Warima, the Warima Exco, on Telegram as well.
Yeah, I don't know, Chibuzo, have you been able to get email now? Prof, can you also, do you have a number?
Sorry, Emma gives her apologies. She's having some technical issues. She's working on it.
Yeah, this is technology for you, but
yeah, but we have to live with this one for now. It's the way of the world
yeah,
at the moment. So.
It's our network, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Hamid Abdullahi, I saw your message on WhatsApp. I mean on Telegram, and I think I referred it to Caris. I don't know what happened about membership registration, right? Dr. Hamidu Abdullahi. Chibuzo, I think you'll have to go back and check your Telegram more often so that we can respond to people's inquiries.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This one is becoming difficult. Aisha, what do you suggest we do?
I think we can, maybe we can just have a conversation on what has been presented already.
Okay.
And until she gets back, if not, I mean, we only have about 35 minutes left, so it's okay. So we can have a conversation around what has been presented, and maybe people within participants already have some issues that they can discuss as well. And so we just get to have that conversation and see where we go with it.
Yeah, I think people can raise their hands. I think people can raise their hands and make contribution, share experiences with respect to collaborations and partnerships.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Okay, I see somebody's hand up. UYHIP 2018. You can go ahead.
Okay. UI 2018. No, I don't see any hand. I think one of the challenges that I have observed is how do we use OneItem itself as a collaborating framework. So I know we are working on the website, and when that is complete, it will give us some form of information about members and what probably they do in their institutions in one way or the other. That can set up a framework that people can consult on. I don't know if people have ideas as to what else we can do to establish a very engaging platform. If you go into the EU system as an example, I think when scientists register there, they indicate their areas of expertise. And then people could then, who are looking for potential collaborators, could go into that and see and probably contact those ones on the sidelines. But I mean, I throw this as a question to see if people have got any ideas that they think Warima as an institution should take to be able to engender wider collaboration in the region. Is anybody there?
Yes, sir. We're still trying to fix the speaker's connection. So please be patient with us. We'll be back soon. If you have any question or contribution, feel free to contribute. Raise up your hands and we will unmute you to make your contributions. We apologize for the delay. Thank you.
So I think that the question that Dembo just asked, I think it's very important about what members here or participants here present would like WARIMA to do in terms of setting up something around collaboration. If you have a collaborative process going on in a university already, maybe you can share that so we know what's feasible and what's not feasible.
Hello?
Yes, Patricia. I don't know. Nigeria.
Hello?
I see Mr. Abba Umar's hand up, and you want to say something?
Our speaker is back on, so.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes,
hear you.
ma'am.
I'm so sorry about this. I just don't know what happened. It was like a glitch. I've used like 3 different networks. I'm listening to your questions. I'm using my phone now, but I have to get on my computer. So just give me a minute and then I'll join you. I'll rejoin you. But please continue speaking. I'll be listening to you. I'm going to join you right now. Thank you.
All right, that's
The collaboration, there was something that was asked about collaborations, what people would like to have regarding collaborations via WARIMA.
Yes, so what specific ideas do you think we can put on the table for what you want to take forward to support engendering collaboration among scientists?
Why is everybody so quiet?
Okay. Julianne?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. The question about what WARIMA can do for improving collaboration between amongst African institutions and overseas. I'm experiencing a collaboration, a UU collaboration created by another. I'm a member of WETRO. I don't know if you know WETRO. It's an international organization, and WETRO collaborate with CIRA, which is another organization like WARIMA. What CIRA do is to put on the website project. They put project and then they look for WETRO members to select the project and introduce the WETRO member to the founders, to the principal investigator of the project. Because most of the problem is that when you go to the net, you find an expert on your domain overseas. and you introduce yourself directly, they will not even reply to your request. They will just ignore. But if there's an institution like Warima, who can who can introduce you to that, to that, the principal investigator of that project, it will work. So I think Warima should maybe be the platform of South African, Sub-Saharan project, and then for each African researcher, it will go to the website of Warima. You look at all the projects which have been put there, and then you can say, okay, I'm interested in this project, and then Warima will be the one to connect you with the owner of the project.
Okay, all right, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm. So it's difficult from yourself, from each researcher, to go into the net and then just join the project like this. Is difficult, totally difficult. When you contact, the email is there, everything is there. You write, and then the person will never reply to you. So,
okay. All right, I see Emma is coming back on.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I am so sorry about this. I really don't know what it was. Like 3 different backups on my internet. I suppose that's part of, we'll be talking about the challenges of collaboration. Internet is one of them. So I'm so sorry about that. Please forgive me. It's not my normal pattern. Let me get into the major screen. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So where did I lose you? Where did you lose me? Had we talked about the facility agreements?
Yes.
We had talked about facility agreements.
Material facility, yes.
Okay, we've talked about this, MTAs. I think we were talking about liability.
No. Liability, yes.
We had finished liabilities.
I have not reached liabilities.
No. Okay. So, but we've done MTAs, material transfer agreements.
Where you stopped.
That was where I stopped. Okay, so
that's where
can you kindly mute the other people, please, so that thank you. All right. So material transfer agreements, agreements resulting from the use of the material being transferred. So they may include the cost issues such as payment for shipping and handling costs involved in providing the material as a requirement for return of, as well as the requirement for return of leftover materials. This has to be put in place, and that's why it's important for people to know how to budget well, and for the research office to assist people in budgeting. I think I stand from the viewpoint of both the research office and the researcher. A number of researchers don't really know how to budget effectively. And they feel that, oh, particularly the older researchers, they feel I've been doing this research by myself for many years. What is this new research, administration activity coming to do for me? I would encourage researchers to welcome with open arms the services of the research office and the research administrators, because they are trained to provide support. And as we've said, research is becoming more complex. There is a limited amount to what a researcher should do. For those of us that have collaborated with people abroad, we realize how much they depend on their research administrators. So all these other agreements and issues related to protocol, the extras, is the research administrators that do it. So we should be humble enough as researchers to approach them to say, okay, material transfer agreement, what am I supposed to do? How is it supposed to be? Is there a template? Can you assist me in doing this? And then be transparent with the budget. I think that's always an issue, transparency with the budget. Then occasionally with the material transfer agreements, there there might be some charge for providing access to the materials, maybe their tissue cultures, their specimens, and then not all of them will be used in the research. And some other people might want to use those particular tissue culture lines. The fees can be charged, but there should be caution so that there will not be some resentment amongst the collaborators. Then liability. There are all sorts of liabilities involved in research, and particularly collaborative research. So this has to be taken into view. I'm sure most of us are aware of the risks. People talk about risk, talk about insurance related to research and other things. So liabilities are damages are related to damages associated with the research project, and it's of concern to the institutions executing research agreements. It's very, very important, particularly to our northern partners. And we should also bear it in mind that it should be important, because in reviewing research studies, looking at the ethical aspects of it, looking at the safety of our patients and the populations, we must be very careful, especially now that they want to do vaccine trials. There's a tendency to think that, oh, the participants, the sub-Saharan African populations are the places where you just go and do whatever you want to do. We must look at our agreement well, and we must ensure that liabilities are in place. You know, there are ways that the liabilities can be addressed. So there can be lawsuits or financial claims that arise from negligence or wrongdoing resulting from a research project. We must bear that in mind. And our populations are not as ignorant as we used to think that they were. And even if they are not educated, they have family members that are educated that live abroad. So we shouldn't just go in and do research that we know that is unethical. And then there's some damages that are related to personal injury or damage to equipment or facilities. So maybe as a result of natural causes, floods, earthquakes, etc. So there's some of these things that we must take into consideration and have insurance for. And then it can, can result from research misconduct, which causes the invalidation of research findings. So there might be plagiarism, people might double, rather than collecting samples or collecting data for 100 or 200 people, they now collect for 100 and then double. So there's some of those things that we have to be careful about, and the PI or the co-investigator that's in charge of that particular site must ensure that these things are done right according to the written agreement. And then there are violations of the terms of the material transfer agreement and then other written agreements. Then other areas we might have issues in are, you know, going outside the remit of the budget. And then, you know, funders have regulations regarding what you can move from one budget item to another. You must be, right from the beginning, there are budget line items, and like NIH will say, do not take more than 25% of a particular budget item to another line without the permission of the program officer. And the way that all these things are regulated now, there's a program officer that's in charge of your own particular grant. So there's somebody that you can communicate with all the time. Then there's a non-issuance of a sub-award for a collaborator. We must always make sure that there's a sub-award, there's an agreement. It's not just, I met this person, it seems like a good researcher, wants to do research with our institution, the person is using resources, and there's no agreement. There must be a sub-award agreement for whatever research activity that is being conducted. And then also running out of funds without completing the activities detailed in the grants or in the project. This is not acceptable. We must have a project officer or a project administrator that is constantly monitoring the expenditure. I always encourage researchers, make sure you have somebody that is bright, somebody that has integrity, and somebody that you also give the leeway to check on the various budgets. I think sometimes with researchers, we don't want other people to know what's going on. We feel that it is my research and it's nobody else's business. But the problem is that the research came to you because you're in a particular institution. And if anything goes wrong, the institution will be affected. Actually, it's the institution that will be liable, not you. Your research reputation might be affected, but also the research reputation of the of the research institution. So it's important that we liaise with the research management office. It's important that we have somebody that keeps the checks and balances on our budgeting. And then there might be ethical procedures, coercing people to be involved in a research project because they're your graduate of assistants or they're your graduate students. That's not acceptable. I'm sure we can remember, some of us might remember what happened at Johns Hopkins University years ago, that there was a researcher that was working on a particular substance and got his doctoral student to inhale the substance, and whether she was asthmatic, and she went into an asthmatic attack and actually died. And as a result of that, all the funding at Johns Hopkins University was shut down for a particular period of time. One researcher brought liability to the whole institution. So we must take these things very seriously. Okay, so we've talked about some of the, things, the liabilities that we might have, etc. I just want to briefly talk about the tools that we use for collaboration. Zoom has come to stay. It's a very important tool, and we use it to collaborate. It's really important for us to, we have to be, if our researchers want to engage in international research, they must be IT savvy. Then Microsoft Teams, Google Drive for storing documents, or documents using, if you want to edit documents on the go, and different people being able to edit at the same time, and storing other documents that are relevant to the particular research study or proposal as you're developing it. Dropbox is also a very good tool, and I'm sure you know about some other things as well. I don't know, okay, we'll talk about that briefly. Then in terms of challenges in collaborations, there are varying administrative standards. I mean, our northern partners have strict procedures, very strict ways of doing things and protocols, etc. And we are expected in sub-Saharan African countries to rise up to that standard. So it's actually learning, sometimes a steep learning curve. But if we have agreed to collaborate, we must be willing to improve our standards. We can't say, oh, this is Africa, there's no electricity, our internet is not working. We must be willing to upgrade. We must be willing to improve facilities. Then differences in time zones, particularly if you're working across like 3 continents or 4 continents, like one of the projects, or a couple of projects that I'm working on, we have some people in Asia. So and then we have the PIs at Johns Hopkins. So if we say we have a meeting for 1 p.m., so that's like 7 a.m. in the US, and it's like maybe 9 p.m. in Indonesia. So how do we manage these various things? How do we ensure that we can have our meetings and people can be effective? Or if you have a collaborator in Australia and they're 12 hours ahead, how do you ensure that you have your meetings at a reasonable time and people don't have to wake up in the middle of the night to be involved in a research collaboration? Then you have language and cultural barriers. I think that's really very important. I mean, you have collaborators in the UK and the US, and they have some younger colleagues on board. And, in Africa, you don't address your professor by their name. But these ones are like, maybe they're in their 20s and they're master's students, or they've just finished, and they're like, oh, Emma, how are you? I mean, you're the person that decided to make yourself a collaborator, so you shouldn't be too sensitive to that. But also the people from the northern partners should be sensitive to some of the cultural issues as well. I remember with one of the studies, the Johns Hopkins studies I've been involved in, there was a major issue, the way they addressed a lady from Asia and her partner, or the person that, one of the co-investigators from her country. And she really took, she took it very badly. She was furious and words were exchanged, and, it wasn't a very pretty sight. And then I had to call the PI aside and explain that, oh, this is what happened. So there might be cultural barriers, cultural issues, and we must be sensitive to the needs to the cultural perspectives of other people. Internet connectivity, that has been demonstrated today. I apologize once again. But if we're going to play with the big boys or if we want large research, our institutions have to invest in good excellent internet connectivity. Then there are also financial issues, like I mentioned, like invoicing. Sometimes you need large pots of money to start off the study, and these other partners, collaborators, will not release funds until work has been done. So what will our institutions do about those things? I mean, we can't just be collecting all the time. Our institutions must be willing to advance funds, etc. And then I think for us as well, the exchange rates keep on fluctuating. And this can affect our ability to be able to collaborate effectively and also within our budget. Like now, because the exchange rate, for instance, in Nigeria, it's been going down against the dollar. So that is okay for us. But if there's a reversal, our budget is just messed up. So and then there are also issues of drawdown, trying to get money, government interference with third-party funds and research, and being able to get money out of our financial offices. So sometimes if you want to be a collaborator, you just have to spend your money. There are times that I've actually had to spend my money to ensure that activities get done, because our collaborators don't understand when we say this is not working. What they want is that the work gets done. Then afterwards we can say, oh, this or that, but we can't be making excuses all the time. So these are some of the issues that you might have with collaborations, and I'm sure you have more. We'll have time to discuss that as well. So thank you very much. I've run through it. I know we are meant to have time for discussion, questions and answers. So I'd like to have your questions, your answers, and then also your contributions. I know you're seasoned researchers. I know that you're seasoned research administrators. So like I said, I do not hold the fort for knowledge, all the knowledge. This is just some contribution to collaborations and networking. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, thank you very much. To say Professor M.A. because sometimes I tend to come from a northern institute and call people by their first names.
Embo.
Anyway, I think that was a wonderful session, and I think wherever we are, I can now just give a clap on behalf of everyone who is on the call. If you have any question or comments that you want to make, I suggest you raise your hand, and then we will open your mic, and then you can say your comment.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Hello, can you hear me? Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Professor Owaje. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Owaje, right?
All right. Just call me.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Dr. Wonkeyo. I'm a professor, of communications and African studies at Nimba University College in Liberia, West Africa. And previously, I was a professor at Temple University in the USA. I very cautiously attentively listened to your presentation. And I think your presentation, on networking, collaborating with other institutions, was well-rounded, and you cover all the points. But some of the perennial problems that, we have, as, researchers, from developing countries, like Liberia, or from the South, like Nigeria and Liberia, these are the, countries, in the Western Hemisphere, USA, England, among others, is that, we have differences, in time zones, and secondly, the governing structure, the way our universities, operate, in Africa, vis-a-vis, countries, in the West, is uniquely different. So therefore, we have challenges, if it came to, collaboration. But however, some of the strategies, that we advance, in terms of looking at our institutions and how to manage, collaborating, I think, that will worth taking. And I just want to thank you for it.
Thank you very much. If you want to ask a question, can you raise your hand and then we'll, or a comment, you raise your hand and then we'll open the mic for you.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, go ahead, TechnoSpark. TechnoSpark, are you speaking, please?
The hand raising icon is under reactions. Maybe people don't know where that is. It's under reactions if you want to raise your hands.
Adiola Oladeji.
Thank you very much. Prof, good afternoon, man. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I'm Adiola Oladeji from Research Management Office, University of Ibadan. Thanks very much for this opportunity. My question is about the role of research administrators when it comes to collaboration. I think Prof has been talking about large studies and small studies where most of, apologies, researchers are committing errors. They don't get the research management office involved. They just go ahead with whatever they want to do. How do we call such? I've seen many, even this year during this COVID, whatever, that they will just come, how can I get this fund paid? Can I give them my account? If I give them the school account, that is all you will hear about the whole thing. No MOU, no contract signed, nothing. So how do we come in as research administrators? Thank you.
Prof. Emmett, you want to respond to that? She connected.
Okay, I've got you. I've unmuted myself. I was muted. Thank you. I'd like to thank Prof. From Liberia for his question. Definitely differences in culture are very important. And then the governance, research governance structure, as well as our governance structure, within our countries. I think it's something that our officials, our management, principal officers in our universities need to actually inform our governments about, because if you have third-party funds, other countries are funding research. It shouldn't be a difficult issue for monies to be released to the researchers. It's a very frustrating thing that money comes in and it takes months before the money is released. And it actually causes delays in the output of the research and puts the institutions in bad light. There's a limit to actually what we can say to outside funders and also to our collaborators. But this is something that our principal officers, the vice chancellors, the deputy vice chancellors, research, and maybe administration and academic need to address in their committee of vice chancellors meetings, because we cannot go on like this. Our governments are not funding research. Other people are funding research for us, and they're frustrating the activities of researchers. So I leave that in the hands of the higher level, like professors and other people that are here. This is a conversation that we have to have with our own institutions, that they have to take to our government. Then our research governance structure also has to be put in place. I think that dovetails into Adiola's question, that people don't let you know about the research they're conducting until they want to maybe send an invoice or whatever to sign off. within our institutions, there are policies that have to be put in place that ensure that people, when they are conducting research, they at least send the budget, send the MOU, have an MOU, and then send the proposal to the research office. Yeah, for many years, I mean, like for somewhere like the University of Ibadan, we've been around for 70 something years. I mean, people had been left to do whatever they were doing. The change has come. Changes don't take place easily, but we also from the research office director has to engage with the faculties and ensure that they understand the benefits of having the research office involved in the research projects. Because the interesting thing is that whenever they run into problems, they come running back to the research office. Please sign off on this and sign off on this. I think sometimes we should allow them to stay in the deep end and sink. Though obviously our own institutions might suffer, but let them drown a little bit and then bail them out. And then also the other thing is offering good services. When people realize that we offer good services, they'll come. And then an easy, a line of resistance is going with the early career researchers and providing them with those services and let them know the benefits of working with the research management office. So that's the advice I can give. Thank you.
All right, good. When the guru speaks, I think everybody has to listen to that. I think that's a challenge everywhere. I mean, in even research intensive institutions like ours at MRC, the universities that you interact with across the world and other collaborators, a lot of research management offices will have similar issues in one form or the other. But I think, like MS says, the authority of the institution has got to support you to be able to deliver. If the authority of the institution doesn't support you, then largely you will really be groping in the water.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Lontong to Shak. Lontong, you've got your hand up. Mokelo, can you unmute Lontong, please? Yeah, okay. Lontong, please.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me join others in commending Prof for this presentation. It was very excellent. Would be a question about, by the way, I'm from the University of Jos, Nigeria. My question is, you've met at a point in time, I lost track of your presentation, mainly because of internet connection, but I heard you say there are different levels of collaboration. I've been thinking about who do you really collaborate with? How do you get this collaboration done at these various levels? Probably within your institution, or maybe within a country, or at a sub-regional level, or at a level that is much higher. So how do you get that done? For example, you're probably interested in certain research areas, and you'll be looking out for collaborators. So how do you get collaborators? Do you get reliable collaborators, especially for the fact that there's possibility you have not met before?
Dembo, have we lost him, or is it my internet?
Yeah. It looks like we've lost him briefly. Can you, if you understand, and if you could respond to his question.
I think we can take another question.
How do you start this?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you, Longtong. Nice to hear from you. I think that's maybe I'll add that to my slides. How do we network? That's a very good question. I think through associations, we all have associations that we have conferences. You can meet people at conferences. You can engage with them at conferences. Somebody, you go somewhere. Okay, let me start before I get there. Let's start with our departments. I don't know whether you have that experience. We can be very territorial. You know, you don't, even within the department, you might not know what somebody else is doing, which is very self-defeating. It's very, very self-defeating. I don't know whether it's a Nigerian culture, whether it's an African culture. Don't let your neighbor know what you're doing. But it doesn't make sense because you're there struggling by yourself. So within our departments, we should be able to identify one or two people that we can collaborate with. The other thing is that, remember I mentioned that there are different types of teams. And one of the teams that you can have, and what I've experienced in collaborating with other people, is you have a master's student that has finished on your grant, and also a doctoral student. I think sometimes we as researchers, we might be ignorant, or sometimes people just don't want to share that additional pot of money with some other people. Because what happens from my personal experience is that if you hire a project officer, there's a lot of weight that is taken off your shoulder. Like I have a doctoral student, I have master's graduates with me. I'll say, okay, please do the first level of this whatever presentation or something. And then I will now do the finance. So I don't have to bother going to a finance office because I have a project officer. But most of the time we want to get the dollars for ourselves, and it's self-defeating. Now, in the process of having these people on our team, we develop their capacity. We develop their capacity to be researchers because they're involved in the data collection, they're involved in the literature search, they're involved in writing. They can do the initial writing and then you review. So in that context, you're developing the next generation of researchers. They'll work with you for 3 or 4 years or 5 years of that project. There's no way, if you are a good researcher or an excellent researcher, that you will not develop the next level. They will not be developed. So that's important. I know some people in the College of Medicine that have major grants from MRC, from WHO, and the number of people that they have developed over the years is amazing. And really, one thing I keep on saying is a quote by Isaac Newton that says that if I saw further, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants. Now, are we as African researchers prepared to allow our younger researchers to train them in our teams, our research teams, no matter how small our grant is, so that they can stand on our shoulders and see further? And as they see further, as they have research, you'll also come back and want to collaborate. Interestingly enough, the collaboration I have with the colleague in Johns Hopkins was a medical student. He finished in 2002. I taught him. Now, if I didn't treat him well as a teacher or as a lecturer, he wouldn't have pleasant memories with me. And if they mentioned my name, he would say, no, I don't want to collaborate with that person. So we as researchers, we as lecturers, we should be careful the way we treat people, because some of those people are your future collaborators. Treat them well. What you sow is what you reap. I don't know what. And then the other areas of collaboration, I talked about conferences, then our associations, and then our research offices can actually see large research grants. And because they have an overview of the people within the university, that's why we have to create a database of our researchers and their areas of research interest. And then they can bring people on board that this research, it's on water and sanitation. We need an environmental engineer. We need a behavioral scientist. We need an education. Might